Esther Chapter 6.
That night the king could not sleep, and he had a servant read him the records of what had happened since he had been king. When the servant read how Mordecai had kept Bigthana and Teresh from killing the king asked,
"What has been done to reward Mordecai for this?"
"Nothing, your majesty."
The king's servants replied. About this time Haman came in to ask the king to have Mordecai hanged on the tower he had built. The king saw him and asked,
"Who is that man waiting in front of the throne room?"
The king's servants answered,
"Your majesty, it is Haman."
"Have him come in."
the king commanded. When Haman entered the room, the king asked him,
"What should I do for a man I want to honor?"
Haman was sure that he was the one the king wanted to honor, so he replied,
"Your Majesty, if you wish to honor a man, have someone bring him one of your own robes and one of your own horses with a fancy headdress. Have one of your highest officials place your robe on this man and lead him through the streets on your horse while someone shouts, 'This is how the king honors a man.'"
The king replied,
"Hurry and do just what you have said. Don't forget a thing. Get the robe and the horse for Mordecai the Jew, who is on duty at the palace gate."
Haman got the king's robe and put it on Mordecai. He led him through the city on the horse and shouted as he went,
"This is how the king honors a man."
Afterwards, Mordecai returned to his duties at the palace gate, and Haman hurried home, hiding his face in shame. Haman told his wife and friends what had happened. Then his wife and his advisors said,
"If Mordecai is a Jew, this is just the beginning of your troubles. You'll end up a ruined man."
They were still talking when the king's servants came and quickly took Haman to the dinner that Esther had prepared.
Esther Chapter 7.
The king and Haman were dining with Esther and drinking wine during the second dinner when the king again said,
"Esther, what can I do for you? Just ask, and I will give you as much as half of my kingdom."
Esther answered,
"Your Majesty, if you really care for me and are willing to help, you can save me and my people. That's what I really want, because a reward has been promised to anyone who kills my people. Your Majesty, if we were merely going to be sold as slaves, I would not have bothered you."
"Who would dare to do such a thing?"
the king asked. Esther replied,
"That evil Haman is the one out to get us."
Haman was terrified as he looked at the king and the queen. The king was so angry that he got up, left his wine, and went out into the palace garden. Haman realized that the king had already decided what to do with him, and he stayed and begged Esther to save his life. Just as the king came back into the room, Haman got down on his knees beside Esther, who was lying on the couch. The king shouted,
"Now you're even trying to rape my queen here in my own palace."
As soon as the king said this, his servants covered Haman's head. Then Harbona, one of the king's personal servants, said,
"Your Majesty, Haman built a tower 75 feet high beside his house so he could hang Mordecai on it. And Mordecai is the very one who spoke up and saved your life."
"Hang Haman from his own tower,"
the king commanded. Right away, Haman was hanged on the tower he had built to hang Mordecai, and the king calmed down.
Esther Chapter 8.
Before the end of the day, King Xerxes gave Esther everything that had belonged to Haman, the enemy of the Jews. Esther told the king that Mordecai was her cousin, so the king made Mordecai one of his highest officials and gave him the royal ring that Haman had worn. Then Esther put Mordecai in charge of Haman's property. Once again, Esther went to speak to the king. This time she fell down at his feet, crying and begging.
"Please stop Haman's evil plan to have the the Jews killed.
King Xerxes held out the golden scepter to Esther, and she got up and said,
Your Majesty, I know that you will do the right thing and that you really love me. Please, stop what Haman has planned. He has already sent letters demanding that the Jews in all your provinces be killed. And I can't bear to see my people and my own relatives destroyed.
King Xerxes then said to Esther and Mordecai,
I have already ordered Haman to be hanged and his house given to Esther because of his evil plans to kill the Jews. I now give you permission to make a law that will save the lives of your people. You may use my ring to seal the law so that it can never be changed.
On the 23rd day of Sivan, the third month, the king's secretaries wrote the law. They obeyed Mordecai and wrote to the Jews, the rulers, the governors, and the officials of all 127 provinces, from India to Ethiopia. The letters were written in every language used in the kingdom, including the Jewish language. They were written in the name of King Xerxes and sealed with his ring. Then they were taken by messengers who rode the king's finest and fastest horses. In these letters, the king said,
On the 13th day of Adar, the 12th month, the Jews in every city and province will be allowed to get together and defend themselves. They may destroy any army that attacks them, and they may kill all of their enemies, including women and children. They may also take everything that belongs to their enemies.
A copy of this law is to be posted in every province and read by everyone. Then the king ordered his messengers to take their fastest horses and deliver the law as quickly as possible to every province. When Mordecai left, he was wearing clothes fit for a king. He wore blue and white robes, a large gold crown, and a cape made of fine linen and purple cloth. After the law was announced in Susa, everyone shouted and cheered, and the Jews were no longer afraid. In fact, they were very happy and felt they had won a victory. In every province and city where the law was sent, the Jews had parties and celebrated. Many of the people in the provinces accepted the Jewish religion because they were now afraid of the Jews.
Esther, chapter 9.
The first law that the king had made was to be followed on the 13th day of Adar, the 12th month. This was the very day that the enemies of the Jews had hoped to do away with them. But the Jews turned things around, and in the cities of every province they came together to attack their enemies. Everyone was afraid of the Jews, and no one could do anything to oppose them. The leaders of the provinces, the rulers, the governors, and the court officials were afraid of Mordecai and took sides with the Jews. Everyone in the provinces knew that the king had promoted him and had given him a lot of power. The Jews took their swords and did away with their enemies without showing any mercy. They killed 500 people in Susa, but they did not take anything that belonged to the ones they killed. Haman had been one of the worst enemies of the Jews, and 10 of his sons were among those who were killed. Their names were Pashandatha, Dalphon, Aspatha, Boratha, Adalia, Aridatha, Parmashta, Arisai, Aridai, and Vesatha. Later that day, someone told the king how many people had been killed in Susa. Then he told Esther,
500 people, including Haman's 10 sons, have been killed in Susa alone. If that many were killed here, what must have happened in the provinces? Is there anything else you want done? Just tell me, and it will be done.
Esther answered,
Your Majesty, please let the Jews in Susa fight to defend themselves tomorrow, just as they did today, and order the bodies of Haman's 10 sons to be hanged in public.
King Xerxes did what Esther had requested, and the bodies of Haman's sons were hung in Susa. Then on the 14th day of Adar, the Jews of the city got together and killed 300 more people, but they still did not take anything that belonged to their enemies. On the 13th day of Adar, the Jews in the provinces had come together to defend themselves. they killed 75,000 of their enemies, but the Jews did not take anything that belonged to the ones they killed. Then, on the 14th day of the month, the Jews celebrated with a feast. On the 15th day of the month, the Jews in Susa held a holiday and celebrated after killing their enemies on the 13th and the 14th. This is why the Jews in the villages now celebrate on the 14th day of the month. It is a joyful holiday that they celebrate by feasting and sending gifts of food to each other. Mordecai wrote down everything that had happened. Then he sent letters to the Jews everywhere in the provinces and told them,
Each year you must celebrate on both the 14th and the 15th of Adar, the days when we Jews defeated our enemies. Remember this month as a time when our sorrow was turned to joy, and celebration took the place of crying. Celebrate by having parties, and by giving to the poor, and by sharing gifts of food with each other.
They followed Mordecai's instructions and set aside these 2 days every year as a time of celebration. Haman was the son of Hammedatha and descendant of Agag. He hated the Jews so much that he planned to destroy them, but he wanted to find out the best time to do it, so he cast lots. Esther went to King Xerxes and asked him to save her people. Then the king gave written orders for Haman and his sons to be punished in the same terrible way that Haman had in mind for the Jews. So they were hanged. Mordecai's letter had said that the Jews must celebrate for 2 days because of what had happened to them. This time of celebration is called Purim, which is the Hebrew word for the lots that were cast. Now, every year, the Jews set aside these 2 days for having parties and celebrating, just as they were told to do. From now on, all Jewish families must remember to celebrate Purim on these 2 days each year. Queen Esther, daughter of Abihail, wanted to give full authority to Mordecai's letter about the festival of Purim, and with his help she wrote a letter about the feast. Copies of this letter were sent to Jews in the 127 provinces of King Xerxes. In the letter they said,
We pray that all of you will live in peace and safety. You and your descendants must always remember to celebrate Purim at the time and in the way that we have said. You must also follow the instructions that we have given you about mourning and going without eating.
These laws about Purim are written by the authority of Queen Esther.
Esther, Chapter 10.
King Xerxes made everyone in his kingdom pay taxes, even those in lands across the sea. All the great and famous things that King Xerxes did are written in the record books of the kings of Media and Persia. These records also tell about the honors that the king gave to Mordecai. Next to the king himself, Mordecai was the highest official in the kingdom. He was a popular leader of the Jews because he helped them in many ways, and would even speak to the king for them.